This is my camera. This is my, okay.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us on Candid Conversations.
Thanks for having me.
For those who are watching, this is Candid Conversations, our series that we have with veteran broadcasters, people who have walked the path that a lot of young persons are walking today. So today we're in the office of Mrs. Tinu Aina Badejo, and she'll be taking us through what it was for her, talking about broadcasting yesterday, what it is today, and what it's likely to be tomorrow. And I'm so impressed that you said to me that in a few minutes, of course, you'll be going in to read the news.
That's right.
How does it feel, that you still are able to provide that service?
Well, it's always
even
a
after
pleasure.
Retiring?
It's always a pleasure. Retirement or age is in the mind. It's how you see yourself. Whatever skill you acquired over the years, it doesn't age. It only adds value to it. And you be a blessing to the people who are listening to you or to your community. If you can still have a Walter Cronkite, Barbara Walters on air, they're still doing it. What's the name of that man on CNN that does interview? He's still there. He's Larry, he's still there. He's close to 90. Nobody's complaining. He's not complaining. If he's enjoying what he's doing and if he's making sense, he's not senile. So why shouldn't he do what he's trained to do?
Okay.
So that is just
So
it.
that's how it is. Now take us through your very first time. I know you started out as a studio manager.
Yes, I
so take
did.
us through that journey. What year was that?
That was in 1977. I finished secondary school in 1976. And at that time, it was such that you had to be 18 before you entered the university. And I finished pretty early. I finished at 16. So I had what you can call gap years in between. And then I didn't quite make the right grades I should have made then. I still needed some papers to do. So what do you do in the interim? I had an uncle who was then in broadcasting. He was a director, admin in the former NBC. And he said, instead of just sitting at home, why don't you just come over and try your luck? The results came out. I had A1 in oral English. He said, what are you going to do that? People don't use oral English, but your school, they insist you go for oral English in WAEC. You have A1 in it now, so what do you do with it? Is it going to be wasted? I said, okay, why not? And that was why I came into broadcasting. I was then 17 years old, and it was then at NBC at Ikoyi. That's where it was then. It later became FRCN, Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria. I was a studio manager, and I remember then I wanted to record. I was in the studio as a trainee, and I was trying to record somebody in the studio. The producer was there, and I went into the studio. There's a cubicle, there's the studio itself. And I went into the studio where the presenter was. I was trying to correct some things in the script, and I was talking. I was interacting with the presenter. Obviously, the producer and the studio manager were listening to what I was saying.
Yes.
And so when I came out, they said, you have such a beautiful voice. You have a good microphone voice. Why are you wasting this and just be a studio manager? I said, I didn't know. I was just talking. And invariably, at that time, the federal government was trying to set up state radio stations. And then they wanted to set up something for Lagos State then. Lagos State was about to have its own radio station, which is the Radio Lagos we know now. And one of the then controller programs at NBC, who happens to be a close friend of my uncle, his name is Bizlaw. You know Bisi Lawrence that writes in there. He was then the controller programs. And he said to my uncle said to him, take this girl away with you. After all, she's from Lagos State. Take her with you to the news station. He was the one that the federal government gave the assignment to set up the station from the federal. And so that was how I became part of the first pioneering set that came to set up Radio Lagos. At the time, I was about 19 years old then, thereabout. And we all came. This whole place was a jungle then, and we came, and he started with us, a wonderful teacher, a wonderful mentor. And he got us all interested in broadcasting, and that was how I got hooked. I never looked back since then.
Yes. So what was the very first time for you behind the microphone? Can you remember?
I can't say specifically that I can remember the first time I was behind the microphone, because they kept on testing. They would say, read this script, read that one, read that one. Except that the first time I had to read the news, I remember my mother got her radio station tuned and she told neighbors to come and sit down and listen. My daughter is going to read the news, that kind of thing. And I can tell you, till she died over 15 or 20 years after, the dial of our radio station never left Radio Lagos. So much so that it got stuck. They couldn't change that dial from that station when she passed on to be with God. For you to see how ardent a listener she was my number one fan then till she passed on, And as I said, broadcasting is such that it grabs you. You can't do any other thing. It becomes a love that you cannot just leave behind. It becomes an addiction that you cannot leave. Even retirement, almost 8 years after, I'm still here reading news once or twice a week, So that is it. It's a passion that you cannot let go. That is it. That is if you truly believe in what you're doing, if you really have a passion for it, if you are in it for the right reasons. Because let me tell you, there's no money in broadcasting. There isn't much in broadcasting. You are not paid much. You are paid peanuts, except now that there's a slight improvement in remuneration. But then the satisfaction you get in being able to impact on society, to be able to pass information, to be able to correct some norms in society, the ways people behave, to correct, attitude, and then, wrong information. You are able to give the right information. Because I don't know about now, but then whatever was coming on radio was Bible. Whatever you said was the final. They believed that the final truth came from radio. So you had to be sure of what you are passing on, the kind of information you are passing on. You have to have done your research so well that you know that this is the fact that I'm passing on. There's no other place to be verified except through you. So you are the last bus stop. Once you know this kind of responsibility, you are very careful of the kind of information you pass out there. There's a phrase in broadcasting that says, if you're in doubt, leave out. If you're in doubt of this fact that I want to pass on, then leave out. Don't pass out that information so that you don't cause crisis or confusion. What you don't know is the power of what they hear on radio. As I said, people believe that whatever is said on radio or television is Bible, is the final. So you can probably cause, confusion. You can knock two different groups together by whatever utterances you make. You are brought up not to be biased in broadcasting.
Yeah.
Whatever your belief, whatever your faith, whatever your ethnicity, it should not come forth when you are on air. You are, you belong to the listener. That is why you said you are talking to a listener, not listeners. Because it is that one person, you must be loyal and faithful to that person. You must represent the interest of that person at any point in time. You owe that person to do your research and give him or her, because he or she is believing in you, that is coming to you, to the one who is going to be like the mediator for him or her. You are the one that is the mediator between the government and the governed. The government believes in you. They give you this information. This is our policy. And then the listener also, the followers, they also want to pass their grievances through you so that government can listen to whatever they are saying. So you have a very important and delicate role to play, that you must be aware of that role, the weight you are carrying on your shoulders, no matter your age, no matter your standing in society. You owe your loyalty to your listener at any point in time. No matter what degrees you hold, somebody is better than you there, listening out there. So that one, you must know that.
Yes. Tell us about some of the programs that you presented. Can you remember when you came into presentation or came into broadcasting proper?
There were several programs, Good Morning Lagos. Memories are made of this. world of metaphysics. I remember I was doing that. It was a wonderful time that I had fun doing that. There was this man then that was God's Power Oyewole. He was the rave then, when it came to metaphysics. And I always had fun in trying to twist him around my finger. You say the fact, I remember there was an interview I was conducting with him. And he said he wanted to put me in a trance during the interview, live on air. And he was saying, you're going, you're gone. At the point I said, Prof, I'm here. I'm not gone. I'm here.
And that was live.
That was live on radio. There was no way you can edit that. Those are the things that you remember, that you relish those old days and those things that you had done. I remember then there was a program I was doing on television, Mr. and Mrs. It was a quiz program for couples that you will ask them information about the spouse, that with the spouse not being there, and it has to match, it has to tally. Whatever answer the wife gives, the husband must be able to give the same. That is how you score your points at the end of the day. It made marriages to be well cemented. They were able to study and understand each other better before coming on that program. You have to be sure of your marriage. You have to be sure of where you stand. Because at the end of it, if there is no synergy between the two of them, that program will bring out that fact, either you like it or not. So I enjoyed that because it gave me the privilege to be able to help, heal homes, heal marriages, with that kind of program. And then basically my main turf was news reading. That was almost like the way I was leaning heavily, because I'm still doing it. I was leaning more on news reading aspect of broadcasting. I was a news reader on radio for several years till date, for 35 years when I retired. And even 7 or 8 years after retirement, I'm still doing it. I'm still reading news. The same happened to television. I became bimedial when Lagos Television was established in Lagos State as well. And Mr. Taiwo Alimi then was the person that was seconded from NTA Channel 10. I think he's Otumba Taiwo Alimi now. Let me give him the right title. And he came and he was able to handpick a few of us also from radio to join, to begin reading news on television as well. So I became bimedial at that point in time. I was operating both on radio and also on television. I remember then I had 2 rosters. I will have the roster for radio, roster for television, and then I will see when am I on radio, when am I on television, and then when do I bring costume. I was multitasking. I was also producing. I became head of presentation at a point in time, and I began to rise through the rank and so on. So that
you went through training.
Yes.
Am I correct?
Yes, I did.
Tell us, relieve that experience for us.
Training.
And tell us the importance of training.
Training at Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria, Radio Nigeria. It was the basic training that you needed then. And it was what made you. It gave you a solid foundation to start off in broadcasting. I remember Mrs. Kweju Alade of blessed memory, the wife of Art Alade. She was then my lecturer at the training school, broadcast training, Radio Nigeria training school for announcers, and several other lecturers that I had then. So they kept you grounded. You knew the ethics, you knew of the profession, and those were the things that were guiding you as you were growing in the profession. And you knew that they were also listening to you as well. They were monitoring you. They don't just train you and abandon you. Any station you were, they were monitoring you, and they will get back to you. Why did you pronounce this like this? Why did you say this? Why did you this? And Mr. Bodiala Lade then, severally, even when I became a general manager on Radio Lagos, Mr. Lalade will still call me. I'll still be shaking at the other end listening to him and say, did you hear what your announcer said? Did you hear how this person read the news? Did you hear how they pronounce this name? I said, sorry, sir, I will go and check up. I will go and you better make the correction. And there it was. That's the fun of broadcasting. You never see yourself that you have arrived in broadcasting. Any announcer that feels that he or she has arrived is not ready to learn. that's the beginning of the death of the profession of such a person.
You just use the word announcer now.
Mm-hmm.
Today they are known as OAB.
Oh yes, that's new to me.
When you listen to radio outside your own turf and the people that you have brought up, your foot soldiers, when you listen to radio talking about some private radio stations and all of that, are you happy at what you hear?
Not all the time. Not all the time. You get several of them who are not really that grounded in the ethics of the profession. Probably because you have a good voice and they brought you behind the microphone, or because you have a pretty face, you are behind the camera, you don't know the rudiments of the profession, and they go on air and they bastardize the profession. You find a presenter who is presenting a musical program and you are talking over lyrics of a song. It's not done, it's not professional. You only where there's a music, an instrumental, that is when you talk. That's when you present, that's when you introduce who the artist is. The artist is not singing, you are singing as well. Who are they listening to? You cause so much confusion on here. And then you find some presenters who talk and on and on and on and on and on and on. The attention span of any listener is 3 minutes. If you are talking, straight talk, nothing mixing it, 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, the attention will wave. With a switch of the hand, he or she changes the channel to another station, when all you are doing is talking. Some people just love to talk and listen to themselves. Why don't you let people listen to you and appreciate whatever you are saying? The bit you are going to say, let it be concise, let it contain all the information that the listener wants to listen to, and then the music can ride on after that. But some of our presenters are competing with music and, with airtime. It's not how long you are on airtime that determines how good you are. It is what you have to offer when you're on air that determines people listening to you and coming back to that station to listen to you. So that is just it.
So what is the essence of training?
Training is to mold you, to know the path to follow, to know where you might have some stumbling blocks, to know how not to do it, to know how to do it, to know what is expected of you. That is what training is all about. To know about the profession, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. There are some of us that we have some speech defects, naturally that we have, that can be corrected if it's not a fundamental defect that you have in your voice or in your speech. It can be corrected. But and then you have some who have accents that are fake. You're listening to somebody in Nigeria, he's neither American, neither British. You are so confused. 1 minute he's speaking like a British, like the Queen. The next meeting he brings American slang. The next meeting he brings Lagos street slang. And then you are wondering, where am I? Who is this person? There is a specific way that you are supposed to speak on radio, that anybody can understand you.
But do you blame them for speaking that way if they have employers who say to them that you must sound like this?
Because some of those employers only put money in. They didn't know about the profession. They are just financiers. They are not broadcasters. That is where there is a clash in it. If you want your presenter to sound American, then why don't you set your station in Atlanta or New York and New Jersey or whatever? You must speak according to the audience, according to the environment you found yourself. Nigeria was colonized by Britain, by the English. So you speak with the English accent. You are trained with the English accent, the alphabets and the pronunciation of the British. And you are not supposed to sound like the Queen. That's one thing. You are supposed to sound that the Queen will understand what you're saying. Not for you to stand to be more Catholic than the Pope. No, that's not so. For people to understand what you're saying, clarity. There's no confusion in your diction and your pronunciation.
So what would you say have changed from your time when we look at yesterday and what it is that we have today, specifically, what are those things that you think have changed?
Half-baked broadcasters, half-baked. Most of them are half-baked. They didn't have enough patience to be trained on their own. During that time, you have to sit in the studio for a number of months. They call it double banking. You have to understudy. Those who know, you learn how to do it, how to behave in the studio, how to talk, when not to talk. All these you learn. But now the moment they are able to speak like, they are on air, they are already talking, they are already speaking, mixing and confusing everything, confusing the listeners. And it is affecting the children that are listening as well. We are polluting the younger generation that is coming. There's no identity. They are confused. They don't know which to speak, which to take, which is right anymore. Because when they tune to Radio A, they hear Jamaican accent. When they tune Radio B, they hear British, they hear Cockney, they hear all sorts are there. So that is it. We shouldn't bring confusion on air. Let's speak with one voice and let's use the same method of training that has been established by the fathers of broadcasting, so that society can be more civil than what we have right now.
So tell us some of the mistakes that did you ever make a mistake?
Who doesn't? Who doesn't? I'm not a saint. Several. I wouldn't say just one. Several. I've made several mistakes that. What I would just say that they are not so profound that they jar your memory now. No, yes. It's not that. Something that you could be corrected.
Reminded. Share with us some of those mistakes.
Let me see. I remember. We were there during the military era, and they ruled by decree, edit and decree. That was what they were ruling with. And I remember I went on air, and I said, this edit or edicts or whatever. And then my controller said, young lady, exactly where are you from? Which village are you from? Where did you get that from? I said, it is in the news. He said, do you need a pair of glasses? Do you need ear glasses for you to know? Haven't you heard people pronounce it before? I said, I didn't know. He said, don't just assume what you don't know. And then we had role models that you will watch them on television.
Yes.
You have Siene Razak Lawal, that was there, Siene Wawe Brown. You have Bimbo Loyede. You have all of them, Joan O'Dwyer. They were there. They were the big girls then that, you look up to them, and the way they did it, you just note things down. This is where she said it. This is how she looked. This is how she put her gilly. That kind of, at that time, you were to dress traditional, when you are on television. It was traditional attire that was acceptable then, So you learned how to tie your gilly by looking at some of them. You learned how to talk, learn how to look at the camera, you learn about your carriage and so on and so forth. There was so much that was expected of the broadcaster then. With the little that you are being paid, you were expected to be the best,
You loved the job.
We loved the job. We were practically studio rats. We never left the studio. We never left the studio. 24/7, you are there in the studio. At times, somebody would have relieved you from the shift you won't go home. You are still there with your friends. And then society was relatively safe then. We will party all over Lagos. After the night shift, we know there's a disco. You go and do this, you go and party, you go and do this, you go and do that. Because nothing would happen to you. You are safe, you are back again. Some will come from party and come to the studio to resume the following morning to take over the studio. And there are some of us that probably will be in the studio because your friend had gone to party overnight, so you cover up for that person until the person. It was the spirit de corps. We had it. Nobody knew the difference, what was happening. And then the informality of the profession as well.
Yes.
It's first name term, you know. There is no Mr. this or Mrs. that. It's not done in broadcasting. It's only in broadcasting you go on air. Yes, you knew your limits, but when you go on air, you know that is when you can call your boss by his name. Yeah, there's nothing you can do. You look forward to interviewing your boss because you know you can give it to him or her. I know. We were rebels. It was fun.
Now,
it was fun.
What do you want to say to that young person? There's quite a number of them join these interviews as we do, as we do it live, you know, on social media. What would you like them to know?
I would like, this profession is such that you have to prepare before going on air. It is a place you cannot afford to make any mistakes because it is costly. The price you pay for the mistake you made in this profession far outweighs, you know, even the offense you have committed, because lives are affected. Some might not be there when you make corrections. Some might not be around when you correct it. Some might not be listening at the time you correct. So they have gone with that wrong impression that you've given them. That is why you have to be sure of your fact. You have to study before you go on air. Study and study and study and study. You can't have too much fact when you are going on air. You can never be over prepared when you are going for this profession. You are never over prepared. It's better to be over prepared than to be under prepared in broadcasting.
Now that you've talked about that, I put together a book about the 25 mistakes that every radio presenter must avoid, and I think it's something I'd like you to take a look at.
Oh, this is lovely. I think you have jumped ahead of some of us with what we have done.
What do you mean?
This is a treasure. This is a treasure that I really appreciate. Even at my age, that's something I look forward to reading. Because as I said, in this profession, you never know too much. You never arrive. There's always new thing you learn. There might be some mistakes you are making that you're not aware that you are making the mistakes. It takes a younger person to point it out to you. And that's another thing about the profession. When you are going on air, it could be the cleaner in your office that could give you the right pronunciation of a particular name. Either the name of an individual, or the name of a place, or the name of a town, you know, the name of a personality. It could be your driver that will give you the correct pronunciation that saves you the embarrassment of, you know, making a nuisance of yourself by murdering the names. You call it, you murder the names. That's what you call it in broadcasting. When you call a name wrongly, they say, she has murdered that name, you know, that guy. So anybody can correct you. You can make mistakes, but once you have this kind of literature like this, it's a guide. At least it minimizes the mistakes that you make when you go on air. So that is it.
That's great. You talked about a book, of course, before we came on. You talked about a book. Are you writing one?
I hope I was writing one.
What's stopping you?
I wonder. I think it's laziness. That is it. Being laid back. That is it. When you feel, what would anybody listen? Would anybody be interested? Because you find out the generation that we have now, they're so much in a hurry that they look down at whatever you hand. They say, that's your time. This is our time. This is how it is done, you know. They don't want to believe that they can pick anything from the older generation. So you find people just withdraw and say, if you say it wouldn't make any difference, so why bother, you know. But the few that, you know, still choose to listen, they learn. Because I know from time to time, I call most of these radio stations that I know some of their presenters or their CEOs and so on. I know I'm always hard on them on Traffic Radio or Radio Lagos or Eco FM. Anytime I hear something wrong, you know I'm on the phone to their head of presentation or the GM or whatever it is, or my colleagues calling somebody. Please let them correct that fact. That is wrong. Let them correct that in the way that name is pronounced. That is not how it is pronounced. That fact is wrong. Correct that fact immediately. You know,
so outside news reading that you do, what else do you do? What is Tinu Aina Badejo up to now as we speak? Are you into mentoring?
I do.
Do you have a group of people?
I do mentoring, I do consultancy,
Okay.
and then I do farming. I'm a farmer, that's another thing. And then I'm a minister, I'm a pastor in the church as well. So that's quite engaging, I'll say. I have a loaded, day, anytime, any day. So that's it.
All right, then. We know you're running off to go read the news. You've been checking your time. So you would have to go and check out how it's
You have to. You go into the newsroom to check, go through the news, go through it with the editor, correct certain things that, ask for clarification, things like that. And then facts as well. If you feel the fact is not right, you talk it over with the editor, and you are able to correct it before going on air, because the reputation of the station is at stake. Your own personal reputation is also at stake. So this you have to be mindful of.
All right then. Thank you very much for
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.